Real talk, a side gig or hobby is an intelligent long-term play for any pro wrestler. Or at least it was until the independent circuit proved that pretty much anyone could make a decent living away from WWE. I mean, just think, if The Undertaker had fallen out with Vince McMahon and not invested in property, he may, in a wonderful alternate universe, have appeared on a GCW spring break show. He could have delivered a Canadian destroyer to Marco Stunt, hating himself inside and doing very little to conceal it. That said though, going after your passion project isn't always a great idea. Dolph Ziggler's decision to moonlight as a stand-up comic should have been a no-brainer, but in the end he went down about as well as his number 30 spot in the 2018 Royal Rumble. Bottom line here is that as a wrestler's career grows stale, they might gamble on a new look or a new entrance theme, but sometimes they'll just stick to what they know. My name is Adam Cleary and these are 8 wrestlers who saved their WWE careers by being awesome at something else. Number 8, JBL, Finance. The artist formerly known as Bradshaw looked doomed in the early 2000s. A burly powerhouse of a man, his deeply basic, colourless work looked painful without quite being entertaining. The APA was a banner time for him, yes, and lines like "I'd offer you a beer, but I only got 6" were about as good an example of the Attitude Era ethos as you're likely to get. However, unable to hang in ring with the TLC generation, Bradshaw toiled in an exponentially less interesting hardcore division. This might be trademark romantic exaggeration on the part of Bruce Pritchard, but he has claimed that Bradshaw was on the same chopping block as Farouk. That was until his new character debuted, and ladies and gentlemen, John Bradshaw Layfield. He was the man's real personality, just amplified. An astute investor, he had already released the book Have More Money Now in order to have more money now, which informed the gimmick. His side gig mutated into a pro wrestling sized version of a mega money heel. Somehow JBL became a main event level talent by just being himself and countering the backlash with buckets of blood. Number 7, John Cena, rapping. Seems mad to say it now, but Cena was floundering as the voice of the Ruthless Aggression era in 2002, if not the face of it. He definitely fit the visual remit of a WWE superstar, and while he could talk, he didn't do so with much personality. His gimmick was that of a plucky upstart, which obviously only works at the beginning of one's career. After a hot introduction and, well, that match with Kurt Angle, by October 2002 he found himself amid a bland, grunting heel turn in a 50-50 nothing series with Billy Kidman. But the trajectory of his career, and indeed the entire company, changed forever when Cena unleashed his freestyle rap skills on a tour bus within earshot of Stephanie McMahon. Impressed, this compelled WWE to develop his star-making Doctor of Thugonomics character. He got it over big. Cena could rap well, or at least in so much as pro wrestlers can act well. Like, he wasn't about to grab Jay-Z's throat or anything, but then again, Shawn Michaels wasn't going to get the Oscar nod over Daniel Day-Lewis. Cena's natural charisma erupted in the role. The booming call and responses and cool factor convinced WWE to strap the rocket to him, and Cena very quickly became a hero to millions of young children after proclaiming his flow to be... Do I have to read this?
Sicker than AIDS patients.
Jesus Christ.
Number 6, Brock Lesnar, mixed martial arts. Now yes, redneck Thanos' pro wrestling career never needed saving as such. Should he have wished he could have called Vince McMahon and re-entered the main event picture the very next night, earning enormous sums of money to do so. But he wasn't interested in doing that for what constituted enormous on the old schedule. He did, however, want to save the lifestyle UFC afforded him by leveraging his huge success there to work McMahon out of more money than any other performer before him. His case of diverticulitis was severe, career-threatening, but ultimately it effectively worked in his favour. It placed an asterisk over his defeats, thus preserving his aura as a freak killer, which impressed McMahon into promoting him as a preposterously overpowered special attraction. Of course, when he returned to the Octagon in 2016, a doping violation put an asterisk over his comeback victory, but again it worked in his favour too. Lesnar by then was firmly established as a man who killed an entire generation of full-time talent, and this only furthered that perception. Number 5, Jake Hager, mixed martial arts. Along similar lines this, but the former Jack Swagger genuinely did need to save his pro wrestling career. Yet another WWE superstar, TM, lumbered with lame, incongruous material. He was stigmatized as a bust so badly that his athletic legitimacy and considerable skill hardly seemed to matter. He was just another guy everybody thought might become a star who did not become a star. another casualty of WWE's pre-NXT lost generation. After leaving the company of his own will, Hager did nothing to alter that perception on his own terms because he wasn't motivated to do so. He found work, but his physique sagged, his performance level dipped, and he didn't strive to reinvent himself. His heart just wasn't in it, so he instead decided to follow it to Bellator, in which he used his real-life hardman pedigree to mount an undefeated streak that grabbed a few headlines. AEW are now quietly building his aura as an effective brick house henchman so as to not immediately draw the comparisons with Lesnar. Instead, we're getting a solid performer with considerably more comedic timing than we ever thought possible. There was always a pro wrestler lurking under that squandered sports entertainer shell, and now there might actually be a TV star too. Number 4, The Undertaker, motorbike riding. Couple of caveats here. The Undertaker's career didn't require saving in the slightest, but the ministry iteration of the character had descended into parody. His eyes weren't the only set that were rolling. You get the joke. Second caveat, The Undertaker didn't excel in the field of motorcycle riding. I mean, he wasn't, and let me just Google this again, Carl Fogarty? He rode cycles recreationally, but he still had to be fairly bloody good at it in order to fly down that ramp with such pelting speed at WrestleMania X7 without risking embarrassment and/or injury. There was, after all, precedent for such disaster on the immense pressures of the major stage. At SummerSlam 92, a severely inebriated Road Warrior Hawk parked his bike right next to his partner animal. His leg was trapped next to the hot tailpipe, and the scalding melted his tights onto his flesh. And indeed, whoops. People were and are still divided on Biker Taker. He was either a cool badass or just having a really cringeworthy midlife crisis. But he certainly looked and owned the part with a real authenticity, and it meant that when zombie gimmick Taker did come back, it felt ironically alive again. Number 3, John Morrison, parkour. The problem with modern wrestling is that there exists so much of it. Merely very good matches are boring now, and almost everybody is a great athlete. We are, let's face it, spoiled. But before all this, John Morrison marketed his brand of athleticism to emerge from the doldrums of the mid-card as a distinct performer. Only problem being that he wasn't doing a great deal beyond exchanging mid-card titles. His implementation of parkour set him apart, and he used it to invent the creative Royal Rumble elimination spot that Kofi Kingston then went on to popularize. He never became a headline act, but his unreal fast-forward agility compelled WWE to make use of it in big-time match scenarios. Events like the Elimination Chamber scored Morrison significant moments, if never a world championship. However, the art perfectly lent itself to Lucha Underground, in which Morrison's name and buzz continued to circulate despite better, purer in-ring workers, rendering his generation more dated by the month. He's back now though, and he is hoping the man has still got it. Number 2, Colt Cabana, comedy. It sort of gets lost in the shuffle a bit, but Colt Cabana was always a very gifted and very underrated pro wrestler. His humor, charisma, and size rendered him much more of a WWE guy, but WWE rendered him more of a punchline than a comedian throughout his bad run as Scotty Goldman. For whatever reason, they loathed one of the industry's most likable guys. During that time, most, if not all, WWE rejects opted for the route of bitter defiance. They wasted me up north, brother, etc, etc. But Cabana subverted that cliche gloriously by conceiving of his creative Has Nothing For You web series. In it, he and Marty DeRosa used the catharsis of comedy to satirize WWE's rotten, ignorant, and only perversely amusing writing staff. It was tremendous, and Cabana used this new relevance as a platform to build an influential empire of sorts by pioneering the pro wrestling podcast industry. And now every Tom, Dick, and Harry, every 2-bit jamoke has followed in his footsteps by hashing out their own overlong podcast nightmare. Incidentally, please join us for Wrestle Culture, out every Friday. Number 1, Triple H. Politics. Triple H's career wasn't over in 1996, but he was in no way destined for greatness. He wasn't a powerhouse, he wasn't technically excellent, he wasn't as good in any area as his new generation peers, but by the time he retires, he will have earned more money than all of them combined. This is because he became wrestling's smartest ever politician. In the mid-90s, sensing the shifting complexion of the locker room, he aligned with the clique to gain influence. That may read as cynical, but then again, he did return returned the favour by bringing Shawn Michaels into the fold in 2002, so it's not like he was ruthless. Using that fierce intellect to later forge himself as a ring general, he of course applied it to the backstage halls of power. He endeared himself to Vince McMahon by solving a months-long headache by pitching the sabotage of Montreal. And yes, I am aware that is only one version of events, but honestly, listener, there are not the hours in the day. He planted the seeds for his eventual seizure of developmental power by labeling every last John Laurinaitis guy as not worth a 2011 WrestleMania match against The Undertaker. He gets the longest WrestleMania match every single year in an attempt to become synonymous with its success. He married the boss's daughter. He leads NXT Invasions on the USA Network. He always knows exactly what he is doing. He is the game. So there you have it. Those are 8 wrestlers who saved their WWE careers by being awesome at something else. Let me know what you made of it all in the comments below, and of course don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. In the meantime though, thank you so much for watching. I have of course been Adam Cleary, and I will see you soon. Goodbye.